Welcome back. It is always a good day when I wake up, I give thanks, and I know that today is a day that I am privileged to step out in my little studio and introduce you to another fascinating human being. I love doing this show. My name is Jane Asher. It is The Next Room. We discuss everything surrounding this journey on Earth. And at first, when I started the show, it was honestly, it was a show about death. But then as I started peeling back the layers, I realized that really to get to death, you got to start with life. So it's really fun. It's very much evolved. So it's death, dying, grief, green burial practices. I'm going to have somebody on very interesting new movement there. We talk about wills and trusts. I haven't done that in a while. So we've got another show coming up on that. And, the more mystical side, afterlife. And so that is the guest that I have today, and you are going to love it. First, just a couple quick housekeeping things. Shout out to my cities. Now, these are in no particular order, but these are the biggest cities that are listening. Singapore, God love you. I don't know what's going on in Singapore, but I will take it. So many downloads in Singapore. Beautiful, cool, futuristic city. Proctorville, Ohio came in as a #1 market for me. El Cajon, as well as San Diego, California. And if you know anything about San Diego County, El Cajon is just east of downtown. So both of those, San Diego proper and El Cajon, have come in. Washington, D.C. is a big market. Sydney, Australia continues to carry the Next Room flag for me. I hope I'm not mispronouncing this, but it's Iwatona, Minnesota. I had a whole bunch of downloads from St. Paul and the Twin Cities, St. Paul and Minneapolis, but I don't know. Iwatona. I'm going to have to go look it up. I love the name. And Parksville, British Columbia. So those are my top cities this week. Thank you, thank you, thank you for tuning in, sharing, downloading, and loving the Next Room podcast. Two things that are coming up in July that are really cool. One is I've had the privilege to be able to travel to the Congo with Africa New Day, just a wonderful nonprofit. And my dear friend Harmony Brown is the executive director. And she said, Jane, you want to go to Africa? And I'm like, yes, please. So I will post a link in the show notes all about what I'm going to be doing there. They do a bunch of cool things with microloans with women, because come on, you give a woman $100 and she is going to turn it into a business. We work with schools, building them, and education programs for children. And then there's Women of the Congo, and there's the Men of the Congo. There's all kinds of cool programs. So check out the link. And if you have the wherewithal and you want to support me, every single penny that I collect is going to Africa New Day. So just so you know that. And then the other thing is, through the network, we have partnered up with Louis, and he has put together a beautiful movie called Gratitude Revealed. And that is going to be free to our listeners for 3 days in July, the 14th, 15th, and 16th. All you have to do is go to the mindbodyspiritfm.com website, put in your email address. We're not going to spam. We're not going to, put you on lists. It's just simply so that you can get the link and watch this beautiful movie about gratitude. And Louis does such a beautiful job. I think you'll really enjoy it. Okay, business is out of the way. I'm going to introduce you to my guest today, my sister-in-law, who I absolutely love, Teresa Rainey Cook. She is a chiropractor, and she teaches all kinds of cool stuff, chiropractic, up in the, I guess, kind of San Jose-ish area, Santa Clara. Teresa's great. I love her to pieces. Anyway, she had gotten a hold of me and said, hey, I have this friend. She's got very unique gifts, and here's a little bit about her. Are you interested? And I said, yes, please. Because when I heard about this person, I was like, okay, I'm very intrigued. She is a Guatemalan Mayan Shaman. Okay. She's an intuitive. So for lack of a better term, a lot of people call them mediums this day and age, or psychic medium. She's a spiritual coach. She's a nanny. She just does it all. But today we're going to dive deep into her shaman side, because that is very fascinating for me. So, Shari Garrett, welcome to the next room.
Thank you so much. I think I need to clarify, I'm not Guatemalan, but I was trained by a Mayan shaman from Guatemala,
Okay.
Manuel Flores, and I trained with him for many years. And that's where my introduction to shamanism came from. And I worked with him for many, many years on the East Coast. And then I worked with a lot of clients working in that tradition of shamanism, which the Mayan tradition is nature-based. You do journeying through, which is kind of a shift in consciousness. You do it through drumming or rattling. That's very ritual-based. You either go down to the lower world and work with the animal spirits, plant spirits, or you go to the upper world, which is where a lot of teachers and guides, and you can do different kind of work in the two different levels. And a lot of this is based on the premise that working at the soul level is where you can do incredible healing. When something reaches the physical level, it's gone through many stages. It starts at the soul level, and it goes through emotional and mental and spiritual, and physical will be one of the last manifestations. So you can actually go into the soul level and do some incredible healing, and it will manifest on the physical level rather quickly. Aside from that, I also have always been very intuitive, and over the years have really embraced and started using that side of things. I, even as a child, was very intuitive, but I thought everybody was, and I thought everybody was getting the information I was getting. So when I would just speak it, it kind of freaked a lot of people out. So in the simple-mindedness of a child, I didn't want people to be afraid.
Sure.
And so I stopped doing that, and I kind of
wow.
shut it down until my early 20s. And when I really worked hard to open it back up, because it was very much a natural part of me. And now I kind of use a lot of different tools, and I see people predominantly by referral only from different practitioners. They work with clients and they find people who, I tend to get a lot of people who are either on the kind of an awakening, a spiritual awakening of their own gifts that they don't quite understand or know what to do with. Or I have a lot of highly sensitive people that are trying to navigate the world. And so I never quite know what's going to walk in the door. I do get a lot of information of people who have passed. I actually do a lot of work with people who have already passed. That's been something that's been happening over the last probably 15 years. And I don't always know when they're going to show up, but they kind of show up in all different ways. But now it's working with people. And often when they come to see me, they kind of have a crowd come with them. And sometimes that means there's information to be exchanged, or there's usually a lot of healing to be done in the grief process of people really worried about what happens, or what, you know, the last conversation they had with somebody who passed and they never quite resolved that. So again, I never know quite what's going to come in the door, and I have a quite a mixed bag of tools that I work with, but a lot of it is also giving people basic tools when they're developing their own intuitive practices, you know, how to ground, how to protect, and be really clear with where you're at. And people are getting kind of bombarded with a lot of extra energy in these days, and there's so much shifting happening, and they often are asking for kind of just clarity about that. And that's kind of what I do.
Okay. Well, that was a great opening. So we're going to have to circle back because you touched on everything that I want to speak to you about. So let's go back to what you said about, from a very early age, you were very plugged in and, would blurt things out and then you shut it down. You didn't realize that you thought everyone had that gift. Do you not feel that we all have the potential to plug into that gift, to explore that and actually receive it if we so choose?
I absolutely do. I really do. And I know more now than ever. I've worked with people. I did groups in New York City when I lived there, of people wanting to develop their intuition. And it's really about finding your own language, how you receive information, because everybody receives it differently. I have a dear friend who she sees everything in colors. Everything is a color. People, everything, any event, and that's her language.
Mm-hmm.
And once you realize and discover what your language is, some people it's sound, some people it's smell. It's a physical feeling sometimes. I get a lot of images. I'm very visual. So I get a lot of, I'm a big movie fan. So my language sometimes is actually a film
Yeah.
or a particular scene, and that will convey a lot of information to me. So yeah, I do think everybody has it. I think more are open to it than others. And I can watch people in everyday life actually be acting on their intuition and they don't even realize it. So I do think we all have it. Absolutely.
That's cool that you brought up the colors because I have a really good friend that does aura colors. I mean,
Mhm.
she literally has taught me. I don't see them. I feel them. So
Mhm.
I understand the colors and I know what they mean about your aura. And it usually freaks people out when I'll say, "Oh, you're a violet yellow. You came to save the planet and you have a very playful side and a Peter Pan syndrome." And they're like, "What? How'd you know that? Do you see that?" And I'm like, "No, but my friend Pam does." I love that you like this is so cool that you're doing this, Shari, because you're breaking it down because we all maybe have the ability to plug in, but our language of our spiritual connection varies depending on what it is that we connect with. So for you, you're a movie buff. So of course, you bump into somebody and you see a reel of something or a scene from a movie or a message, then that's how you're receiving your information. For me, it's audio. I mean, I can hear a lot of things and,
Mhm.
and it trips people out. I get where you're coming from. Okay, so you shut this gift down until you came into your own and was like, I'm not going to hide anymore. This is who I am. And it doesn't make me a crazy person. It just makes me tuned into my truth. So when you started deciding that that was something that you wanted to lean into, did you find that you had to promote it or was it just showed up? People just showed up and wanted what you have.
I think it was in the beginning when I started really consciously wanting to open back up. Um, I was learning more nature-based practices, and remembering, because I grew up in the Sierra Nevadas and I was very connected to nature. The rocks, the trees, everybody was my friends. I knew at a really young age that everything was alive and that we interacted with it energetically. And so when I remembered that and reconnected with that, things just kind of started unfolding in my life, and one thing led to another. I'd meet a particular person that would lead me to the next step, to the next step. And it really just opened up rather quickly. The talking and working with people who had passed, that happened more later on. I will say, I want to say, well, I'm almost 60, but I would say in the last 20 years, that's been a predominant piece for me.
Mm.
And I do hear, they come in and I hear them a lot. I'll be in, and what happened a lot on the East Coast in particular, because I was there for over 25 years, I would be at certain places and they'd absolutely show up and try to get my attention because they'd want either help with a situation, or they basically wanted to either make themselves known.
Sure.
And so that started happening in some very specific places. And I thought, and at first, even I was like, right, I'm just, isn't
Right.
that creative?
Right.
But then I really, there were too many instances very quickly together that I couldn't ignore it anymore.
Right.
And it's not something you can tell a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not, people still, I think, have a hard time with it in general. I
Yeah.
luckily have a fantastic community now that I'm a part of, that I have a lot of support and people are not surprised. And still often will call me up and go, what's this? Kind
Right.
of, what do you think about this?
I love that. Let's peel back where you just went with when those that have transcended to, I like to call it the next room,
Yeah.
are now visiting you and giving you messages and getting your attention because they know that you are intuitive and you've opened up to receive. And they also know that you are going to do it with a good heart and you're going to pass that information on to assist someone, whether it's with their grief or with something, a lesson they need to learn. Um, how cool is that? So when it first occurred, you said, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?" And then you quickly realized, what was that pivot or that defining moment when you said, "Okay, I'm not losing my mind. I'm actually being visited by those in the beyond, in the next room."
I think I just got a lot of confirmation from people when I would get information for people, and they obviously were very surprised. There was information that there's no way I could have gotten any other way.
Mm,
And you just get these little confirmations all along the way, from either people or just the timing of things, I think really struck me a lot. What a big lesson I had to learn, though, and as a natural energy, I think I've always been kind of tuned in, when you can walk into a room and just read the whole room.
mm.
And what I needed to learn for myself was only give information when asked. Don't just jump in. That was, don't just jump in and go, oh, bleh. Here, here's some
Mhm.
information. But it was really about learning kind of a level of boundaries, because I also was, and I think a lot of energy healers, not even aware of it, are going to go over there and help somebody. We're going to help them by we can read what they need, what they're going through, and we want to jump in and help them and fix them or whatever, or be of service. But we weren't invited.
Mm.
If we weren't asked, we were not invited. And it's so important to make sure that we kind of pull back our energy a little bit and only help when invited, because we're actually robbing somebody of their own process and
Mm.
their own healing and self-discovery. Now, somebody asks me, absolutely, I will be of service. But I learned to have to wait to be asked. And I think that's one of the most important lessons that I had to develop as this got stronger and stronger.
Oh, Sherry, you are right on the money. I love that. You just what you said, robbing someone of their own process, their own healing, and
Yeah.
trying to figure it out, and that we need to be asked. Very similar to, advice. My mother would always say when people would ask her for her advice because she was super wise and just seemed like she had all the answers. And she would always pause and say, only if you really want to hear what I have to say, you know? No, come lay down. Sorry, my puppy. I told her if she behaved, she could come in the studio with me. And now she's giving me a little grief. So, that's really good. So let's talk about your process of how you get in that space. So say, for instance, I'm coming to see you and you're going to have a session with me, and I'm going to bring a host of all of my loved ones with me because I always travel with thousands. How do you get in that frame of receiving, and what is your process to ground yourself and to be in that space?
Yeah, I have a wonderful space that I get to work in, and I set the space, I set the intention before anybody arrives, that it's whatever takes place is at the highest good for all involved, and that I be as clear as possible for them, and that that my stuff stays out of the dynamics. I
Ooh.
make sure that I keep that really clear. That if I'm bringing information in, that it's information just for them. It is not going through my own filters or has anything to do with my own stuff. So I stay out of it. I think
Mhm.
that's really important, an important intention for me. I do a grounding process. I do a lot of work with chakras in clearing and resetting them. So I make sure that I'm clear and ready to go for the next person that I see. And I do that in between sessions as well, so that I make sure that there's no, because, energy is bountiful. And if you don't keep it really clear, I think in between sessions, there can be a lot of muddling that goes on and a
Mm.
lot of interference. And I have, like I said, very sensitive people coming in, and they are easily impacted by energy. So I try to make it a very clear space for them and a very safe space. I'm very big on setting protections, and I teach people to do really basic protections for themselves. And that I get a lot of, I'm finding a lot of highly sensitive people are very anxious. There's a lot of anxiety going on, especially when there's all this incoming energy they don't understand. And so teaching them about the basics, really basics of their chakras, the purpose they serve and how they work, and then how to reset them and clear them, has really helped a lot dealing with anxiety and just them moving in the world easier. So setting the space, setting the intention is everything. And really teaching people that they're only limited by their imagination.
Mm. Boy, isn't that the truth?
And that really opens up a lot of things. So,
Yeah. Let's go back to, I love that you said you want to keep your stuff out of it. What about your guides? What about your, all of those that are helping you, that are cheering
mhm.
Shari Garrett on from the next room? Do you have sessions just specifically for yourself where you're like, okay, team, what do you got for me?
Well, I'm I feel like I'm in constant conversation with them
Okay.
kind of throughout my day. And occasionally they'll really get my attention, like pay attention now. This is
Mm,
important. They do that a lot. But I've often said I never feel alone. I'm I'm in good company always.
yeah.
And I really have never really felt alone because
Yeah.
they are always present with me.
Yeah.
And I have a few that pop in periodically that are not kind of constant. And I know when certain situations come up that when they show up, it's very important. Um, I have my own people who have passed that I talk to quite often. And yeah, I'm in really good company.
Right. Okay. That's another thing. Wow. That is really a great way to look at it. you're never alone because
Mm-mm.
you are in constant communication with those on the other side, those that have transcended in spirit. Um, and what a, it's like this immediately I felt like, oh, wow, I'm never alone. Like I'm so good when I am alone physically in a room because I feel as though I'm with a host of loving entities. And that's a very cool. I never really thought about it like that. I never understood why I was so comfortable being by myself. I am never, ever, ever lonely. I
Right.
love being alone. I am like, and it freaks some people out and they're like, no, you're so gregarious. You're always out in the. And I'm like, oh gosh, you do not know me. I am most happy when I am sitting in my reading chair with a cup of coffee and a stack of good books all alone. I love it. Or in the backyard with my hummingbirds. Um, wow, Shari, this is so cool. So now that you have received and you've opened up to say, okay, I'm good with this. I know that it's not weird. I know that this is what I came on the planet to do. Um, is it all referral for you? I think you might have mentioned that at the beginning. How do you help? Like, if my listeners are tuned in right now, are you open to having people reach out either through, I don't know, website, phone number, something? If you resonated with someone out there, say in Proctorville, Ohio, are they able to reach you for an online session?
Um, up until now, it's been by referral only.
Okay.
And part of that was mostly, when I started seeing people, it kind of started gradually, and they were referral, and they were people who had tried everything else. And, I kind of in the in between of, uh, let's see what we can see.
Right.
But, and so I was really mostly interested in people who are really open and ready to do the work. I'm not interested in working with people who want me to heal them, or
Mm,
me to do the work for them. And so that's where I got really cautious about opening it to the general public. I
mhm.
am open to people who want readings from anywhere in the world. I do them over Zoom. I can do them over Zoom. Um, and I've done some even over the phone.
Yeah.
So it is possible, and I would be open to that. I think there's a caution. I feel a caution in doing that, in just like, hey, I want a reading. What are you going to tell me?
Right.
But I feel it's really, I can serve somebody much better if they're ready to go. I really want to work on something specific. But absolutely, I would be open to I would be open to people who want that. I want to be able to help people, but they need to be ready to really be open for the work.
What a great distinction. And good for you for saying that. It's obvious to me, and I interview a lot of individuals, and I've had some on that are, back in the day when I was first getting started, some a little suspect, just out for, grabbing the dollar. And
Yeah.
now I'm very, I tune in. And if it doesn't feel right, they don't get on the show. This felt right. And now that I'm meeting you, I'm like, right on, because you saying that right there, I'm not here to heal you. This is your journey. If you're ready to put in the work and roll up your sleeves, then you're almost like you can help guide or give them, show them the tools that you have developed that they will be able to develop only if they're willing to do the work.
Yeah.
So good for you. That's really cool. Um, wow. Thank you, Teresa, for connecting us. This has gone super fast. We've already chatted for a half hour, but I don't want to limit you at all. Is there something that we haven't covered, or is there a thought that you've had, or is someone tapping on your shoulder right now saying, Shari, share this? Please do.
Hmm. I think one of my favorite things when I'm working with somebody for the first time is I'm often shown standing with them next to me on the top of kind of it's usually a very high peak looking out over a vista. And the purpose of that vision, because it'll show me all the people that they have touched, either
Mm.
directly or indirectly in their life or in their work. And it's often something that they're usually very surprised to hear that they would have had any impact. And I'm like, I can see the vastness of people that they have touched. And I will say, I see the extraordinary vastness that you have touched
Mm.
already, and that where that's going to continue to go. And it's really quite remarkable. So thank you for this opportunity. And I consider it a great honor to get to talk to you.
Okay, you just made me well up because I was with you. I was there and I was standing with you up on this big mountaintop, and I could see the connection, not just necessarily mine, but all of us, because we're all
Yes,
connected, which
yes,
circles back to what you said before about um, nature and how everything is alive, the rock and the trees and the flowers and the bees, and it's all these little fingers of connection. Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you. I felt that one, Shari. That's fantastic. Well, I'm really a fan, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. And I love that you're opening up to help people because you mentioned earlier there's a lot of incoming noise. There's an
yeah,
awful lot of anxiety. Um, and it's not that we're supposed to stick our head in the sand at this particular time in our life, but we do have a choice about what we want to open up and receive and bring in, and
mhm,
also in return, what we want to give back. And, I had to make that distinction a long time ago because I don't have time. I'm 62. I do not have time to mess around with any negative Nelly bullcrap. Not going to do it.
yeah.
It's just life is such a gift and it's just so precious. This portion of it, although I know that we on and on and on.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let so let's go there. If do you have another minute? Could I, because I
Oh, sure.
okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay. So what is it, Shari Garrett, that you now you see things, you hear things, you feel things? What is it that you intuitively know, feel, or hope is in that next room, in the next phase after you release your physical self here on this side?
Mm. I have always been probably more comfortable with thinking about that process than most. I've thought about it. I remember very clearly thinking a lot about it as a kid. Um, and I remember even at 10 figuring out that reincarnation, when I heard about that for the first time, it made perfect sense to me. And I knew very quickly, and I even did well, if I had a past life, what would it be? And I wrote down I saw this scene unfold, and I wrote down all the information. I knew the guy, I knew the name, I knew the place, I knew the time period. And being the library nerd that I was in high school, I went and started looking for fun to see if this person actually ever existed. I found it all.
Wow.
I found it all. And I was like, oh. And so that kind of like, how would I possibly know
Mm,
that kind of information? I've traveled, luckily I've traveled quite a bit in the world. And I've been walking down a street in a completely different country, and I knew what was around the next corner. I knew the shops, I knew scenes
mm,
would unfold.
mm.
And very familiar. very familiar with them. Anyway, so I'm very comfortable with the concept of coming back again and again and again. And I feel like after we leave this particular lifetime, I feel like we get a phase where we either get to hang out or decide how soon we come back and what else we want to do. What else we want to come back and experience, because I really believe life is all about experiencing as much as you can. For me this time around, it's about trying to figure out and understand human relationships. They're kind of baffling to me, which I think is true for a lot of people. But it's been about experiencing as much life as possible and different places and people. And I love that everybody has a story. I don't care where you're at or where you're from, everybody has a story. And I've had the benefit of meeting a lot of people in my life from a lot of different walks of life in different countries. And I'm stay curious. And I just think it's really important to open and be curious about each other as much as possible.
I like you a whole bunch, Shari Garrett. As Teresa knows, she knows what gets me going. So, that's really cool that she would reach out to me. Several friends have done that when they connect with an interesting individual that they just think, oh, I wonder if Jane would like them on the show. Well, here's the answer. Yes. As you can see, it's just, shows come in from all different angles, and I'm so open to receiving. And that's the great thing too. I don't have to solicit anymore. I used to have to try to track shows down to come on, but now they just magically show up because the vibe is there and the energy is there and the right people are coming to me so that I can shine a big bright light on individuals like yourself. So I'm just so grateful that you would take the time to share with us today. It's really been beautiful. And I will, when I get up there to see Therese, I will look you up. I would love to have a cup of coffee. And
that would be great.
Yeah, I would really love to meet you in person because I have a feeling that we're going to be connected for a long time. I just have that feeling. This was very powerful today.
Thank you.
Any final words, any last little words, or?
I just really appreciate this opportunity to get to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. My guest is Shari Garrett. She is just a beautiful human being. I mean, my goodness, I'm going to listen back to this. And as you can see, Shari, this is for my YouTube channel. Look at these notes. I'm a messy note taker, but I have got all these wonderful quotes from you, and I'm just so very grateful. So you've been listening to The Next Room, where death is dinner conversation. Obviously, we cover more than just the physical aspect of death. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And please take advantage of the Gratitude Revealed. It is such a cool movie. I actually paid for it back in the day because I had to see it, because Louis is just such an amazing time-lapse photographer. He did the, what's that mushroom movie? I can't remember the name of it, but he did a whole thing about mushrooms. And it's quite famous, but he's that guy. So Gratitude Revealed is his new one. So it is absolutely free to the Mind, Body, Spirit FM listeners simply by putting in your email. It's coming up July 14th, 15th, 16th. It's 2023, just in case you're wondering if this is an old show. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you tuning in. Take care of yourselves and be kind. It's so easy, in anything that you can be on the planet, that's an easy one. So just do it. Go forth and be kind. Thanks again for tuning in.